Welcome to this special Behind the Biz episode of Student Housing Insight Podcast, where we are putting you in touch with the people who bring student housing to life. I'm your host, Wesley Dees. So, my first job in student housing, I guess I should say the first paid job in student housing, was on a brand new lease up that was under construction and would be delivered in the middle of August when all 520 residents would move in on one single day. That was 1998. Do you remember what websites looked like in 1998? I guess it really didn't matter what it looked like because internet was so damn slow back then. You could literally drive from campus to the leasing trailer, pick up a brochure, and be back at your computer before it finished loading. But anyway, that job is where I got a real appreciation for graphic artists who could take a set of architectural plans and then create a rendering of what the building would look like with people at the swimming pool and people using the fitness center. If it wasn't for those drawings, it would have been so incredibly hard to lease those apartments. Because a leasing agent needs to tell a prospect a story of what their life is going to look like if they lease at that community. And when your community is a tract of red North Carolina clay, not dirt, but clay, it's really hard to sell that prospect on how great their life is going to be. It's like selling a car by showing all the pieces laid out on the ground. So, yeah, I had a lot of commissions that year that would have never happened if it wasn't for a graphic artist somewhere who penciled out all of those renderings. But now it's 2019. Gen Z doesn't know a world without the PlayStation in it. The oldest Gen Zers have been taking pictures with an iPhone since they were 10. Pencil renderings certainly doesn't spark their imagination, and photos and videos from a similar property that was built somewhere else, it just evokes questions about what their community will and won't have compared to that one that's in the still photos. So it seems only natural that as operators, we are now looking to virtual reality to create that connection with prospects. Regardless if you are developing a property or currently operating a student property, VR is increasingly becoming just a necessary tool for your website or even to have in your leasing office. So one of the companies that is creating VR tours for student housing is uForis, based in Vancouver, Canada. Why is Vancouver important? Because that's where EA Sports' largest developer studio is located. And we're talking about game developers that created games like FIFA Soccer and Madden Football. uForis was founded by these same developers from EA Sports. So as you can imagine, their commitment to quality is pretty deep. Recently, I sat down with two of the founders from uForis, Dora, Cheng, and David Lee, to talk to them about why they chose to move from the gaming industry to creating VR renderings of real estate and their journey into student housing. So sit back, take a listen to this interview. I think you'll really enjoy it, and we'll have a couple of takeaways in the outro. Dora and David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us, Wes.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you guys are able to were able to join. We tried doing this recording back at Interface, but there was just way too much background noise, and we weren't able to do it. So this is take 2 of the Behind the Biz with uForis. So yes. Thanks for giving me some more time and allowing us to go through it again.
Thank you.
But I'm extremely excited to talk to you guys, not only because you're a sponsor on the podcast, you're also a sponsor of our annual summits. But in addition to that, you guys have kind of arrived onto the scene in the U.S. market within the past year or so, and part of our Fab Five this year. And it's been amazing to see the quality of work that you guys are putting out, kind of the next level in virtual reality rendering that we're seeing in the real estate industry, but specifically in student housing. And I want to just spend a little time, talking with you about that. But before we get into all the other questions I've got, just kind of give the audience your, elevator speech.
Sure. So we at uForis, we create virtual tours and fly-throughs of student housing properties, and we also provide analytics on them. So these virtual tours could be existing properties, so properties that are already stabilized, or they could be of 3D renderings. So in fact, that's increasingly a bigger and bigger part of our company, which is bringing in new buildings that have not been built and looking at the construction papers and everything that the architects have designed and trying to bring them to life with photorealistic renderings.
And you guys are doing a great job of that. I've working with you guys on a project right now in Reno, Nevada. And, we always talk about on the construction side, on the development side, where, we're selling dreams on a dirt. And, from what you guys have put together, it's just, I've told the folks there's no reason for us to do a scan of the model once it gets done, because I love your rendering more than any model that we've ever been able to put together.
We appreciate
and our interior
that.
designers, and they agree with it. So.
We really appreciate that, and we did work very, very closely with the designers as well. They're awesome to work with. So.
Yeah, and of course those designers are South Park Interiors.
Yes, they are
out of Charlotte, and I'm glad that I was in their office not too long ago having a conversation, or we were on a conference call with the developer of that project, and I had not seen the renderings yet. And of course, this isn't, the full VR immersion experience. This was just a picture of it, right? And I was like, there's no way that's like that's a real photo. That has nothing to do with rendering at all. And it was, we started actually pulling up the real photos of our competitors in that market, and we were looking at it. And of course, these were photos of their models that have been staged, and they look good. But then you put it beside of your renderings, and it just blows them away. So a lot to be said for the quality that you guys bring to this. But give me a little bit of the origin story. That's one of the things I like to do in these Behind the Biz episodes. So how did uForis get started?
Well, so we actually did not come from real estate at all. So I actually come from the video game industry. I spent about 10 years there. And so was my CTO. So he was shipping NBA Live for EA Games, and I was shipping FIFA, so FIFA Soccer, the game, also for EA Sports. And we spent 10 years doing various different kinds, so not just sports games. I also worked on The Sims, for example, and a bunch of casual games. So games that take a lot less time to finish and to play, and a lot less time to truly enjoy. But after VR came out, we thought, well, this is amazing. Why are we not doing something in VR? So we decided to do our own engine, actually. So something that we can use to create different worlds and for other people to create these worlds. And we have all these dreams of letting people traverse these different worlds and go through portals and so on and so forth. It's very sci-fi. So we went ahead and did it. And of course, we were so early. So we decided to do this. We decided to do VR before Facebook bought Oculus. So we were so early that really, to be frank, there was no market for that. And looking at the market now, we're probably still too early for that. So we decided, well, let's put this to good use, because we're very happy with our technology. We think it's awesome. But what can we use it for? So long story short, we talked to a lot of different industries. We talked to travel, we talked to cruises, we talked to manufacturing. Believe it or not, we talked to fashion. And looking back, real estate was the one that stuck out as something that could really use VR right at this moment. So we took on our first client, who is a Canadian student housing property management company. And then we just never looked back. We focused on student housing. We dabbled a little bit in commercial real estate, but these days, most of the time we're spending on student housing. And we really enjoy it because we know that students are very much into technology. So they definitely enjoy using VR and enjoy checking out VR in general because it's still kind of new. And it continues to use our technology. So that's kind of how we came about. Like I said, we never had any real estate experience. Ironically.
So let me just recap that again, because there's some things we've talked about, kind of how you guys have gotten into this industry before, but there were some things there that I believe you said a little bit differently that I just kind of had this, wow, we are really getting something unique here with the way that you guys have come in. So all in the gaming industry, which, I'm not a gamer, but I know enough about the gaming industry that a lot has changed since I played, Madden 99 or
yes,
I was
indeed.
in college or whatever.
Yes, things have changed.
To what it is now, as far as the graphics and how realistic everything is.
Yes.
So you guys are in that world, and you start talking about VR from a gaming platform.
That's right.
And you said you guys build an engine for VR. What is that? Expand on that a little bit. What does that mean?
Sure. So basically the most popular game engines in the world are Unity and the Unreal Engine. So Unreal Engine is the engine behind the game Fortnite, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of, or at least their kids have heard of. And so at the time those two engines were not really focused on virtual reality. So we decided to do our own because virtual reality has a little bit of a slightly different requirements than a typical video game engine. It needs to be a lot more nimble. It needs to be higher performance and so on and so forth. So we decided to do our own. And we also had this inspiration really coming from all the science fiction that came before us about a place that you can immerse yourself in and see a completely different world. So we thought, okay, well, let's build an engine that will let us do that will let developers who are of similar minds to do that as well, to create these worlds. So that's kind of how it all started. The end product is probably could be described as a browser, like kind of like something like Chrome, something like Firefox, but all in virtual reality. So it was actually working and running, and we were demoing it to people way back in 2014. But it wasn't at the time. It was way too early for the industry. It wasn't something. There was not enough people really to consume the content. There was not enough people to build the content. So it was a business model thing. The business model just wasn't there at the time.
Gotcha. So you guys you've created this engine. Now you're looking at, okay, well, what are other things that we can use this for? And ultimately real estate ends up popping up. And, it makes sense why student housing's kind of, because we're always kind of, I would say, especially over the past 10 to 15 years, we're kind of the first to always try out something new in student housing. And there's a couple reasons for it. I think a lot of it has to do with our leasing season and how competitive we are. And we're always trying to find an edge. But I think really it comes down to, what the students, what that demographic is, used to having, when it comes to any other type of consumer experience that they have, right?
Right.
And not just consumer experience, but even, from a social experience. And, being able to, back when I was on site and we didn't have a model, we actually came up with these little, 3D models that we paid somebody, probably $3,000 to $5,000 to make, to take the same type of models that you see in an architecture school, of people putting together. Right. So those were great, but it required somebody coming to the office to see them, or, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense of taking a picture and putting it on the website. Right.
Right.
So, and then we got into taking that floor plan and making it, 3D and being
Yeah.
able to move it around. And then there's been, the whole concept of actually going into that floor plan.
Mm-hmm.
But now what you guys have introduced is taking up basically virtually building a property and completing all the finishes, everything.
Yes.
Coming down to, how the interior designer wants to make the beds, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And what's amazing about it is not only are you able to accomplish all those things, but even to the point of what you guys are doing with thinking about, well, what's the angle of the model?
Yes.
In relationship to the rest of the world, are the windows facing north or they're facing west? Because that's going to have a completely different change.
Yes.
And how the sunlight is affecting everything. And you guys are capturing that in these VR renderings. And it's just completely amazing.
I'm so glad you're very excited about it because we're so mired. Our team is so mired in the details that sometimes, we get frustrated. To be quite honest, sometimes we get frustrated with, how the lighting just isn't shining on the bed right, and sometimes we lose the big picture that, this rendering is awesome and we're doing really cool things, and it's awesome for us to hear that our clients, such as yourself, are very, very happy with what we produce. Because like I said, we're so hung up on the detail sometimes that we forget. That's how we do some good work here for sure. And we're proud of it too.
Absolutely. So, Dora, tell me, like I said, I'm obviously excited about what you guys do. And I think you've got a group that's very passionate about what they're doing. But give me the why behind, the work that you guys are doing.
I think the biggest thing, so, it's funny, Wes, we were talking about our origin story, right? And I came from the video game industry. So for me, everything, because if you think about video games, of course, the whole thing is not real. The whole thing is virtual. And we spend most of our time making sure that you believe that it is real. And there are a lot of techniques and a lot of things that go into there that make sure the realism comes through. And it's world building, basically, right? So for me, when I look at our renderings and when our team look at our renderings, we look at what kind of world we're building. So we strive to make sure that when we are delivering something, when we're working with a customer in student housing, that there are three things that we accomplish. Number one, everything, all the finishes, all the materials, the cabinet dimensions, the room dimensions, everything is precise. They are accurate to the specifications that the architects and the interior designers have deemed them to be. So that's the first thing, is it has to be precise. Number two is authenticity. And that's where the world building comes in. We want to make sure that we are targeting the school, the college, the demographic. Are they predominantly male or female? All of that stuff. And we are accessorizing. We are putting in beddings and cushions and on pictures and all that stuff that evokes the right kind of feelings for this particular demographic. Right. And of course, we only know all of that, in terms of our customers' vision and their target market by collaborating very closely with our customers. So we make sure, the third thing we make sure we do is that we have a very involved process. In fact, we ask our customers, and I'm sure you know this very well because we're working on a project together. We ask our customers to have a weekly meeting with us, and we have towards the end of the project daily meetings or daily emails to talk about if the renderings are to their liking. Do they want something different? Is this speaking to the right demographic, and so on and so forth? So we take building this world through our renderings extremely seriously. And we think that those kinds of attention to detail make a huge difference when it comes to improving the digital curb appeal, because you spend so much money on our clients spend so much money on their websites, on their billboards, on brochures, or whatever marketing materials they have. And they've gone through this whole process of designing a great and stylish looking property. So we want to communicate that, right? We want to communicate that on the website or wherever it is, or in definitely in the headset, wherever it is that they want to show off their property. So that's the why we're doing it, is we think that our experience in building these worlds and our process of having very close collaboration relationships with our clients are going to make a difference in the leasing process for their properties.
Yeah, I've yet to experience one of your VR tours on one
really?
of the. Well, no.
Show it to you next
just
time.
No. I have experienced your VR tours.
Oh, okay.
I haven't experienced them on a property that I've provided, consulting services for.
Okay.
So I'm excited about doing that in Reno. I have been involved with other projects that deployed VR tours, through the process of scanning and also doing rendering from architectural drawings. And it came out good. It definitely helped sell, but the quality was just nowhere near what I've seen with uForis. And so I'm excited to see what's going to happen in that, the other projects that I'm consulting on that you're now a part of. I'm excited to see that roll out during the leasing process and the reactions that we get from students and parents and that type of thing. But, I have experienced a uForis, not a VR tour with the goggles out in the field, but I have been able to see fly-throughs that you've done for other companies, and walking into that temporary leasing office where everything is, I don't want to say it's a mess. It's not a mess, but it's very confined, and there's, not a lot that you could do. There's obviously not a model. At best, you may have a little corner that's kind of sectioned out for showing off the finishes and the cabinetry and that type of thing. But being able to walk into one of those offices and seeing the fly-through that you call it, up on one of the big screens, it's just a completely different experience versus a similar property that doesn't have the same thing. Yeah. So
we're definitely looking forward to showing you some as well. They're gonna look gorgeous, I think, if I may say so myself.
Well, hey, so, talking a little bit about you guys entering into the student housing industry, what's been one of the biggest mistakes let's back it up before then. Before that, what surprised you most about student housing since you guys have been a part of it?
To me, it's the extent that the community. Let me back that up a little bit. It's how important building a community is for student housing, because and how similar that is actually to my previous job, my previous life, because, as everybody knows, video games have their problems with their communities, but the positive side of video game communities is that they're very passionate. And when they're very passionate, they're very passionate. And they're the best evangelizers, if you will, of your game or whatever you may be building. And I was surprised at how similar it was in student housing, in that, student housing spends a lot of time nurturing that community, making sure that the students are taken care of, making sure that they get what they need. And because it could be a very emotionally difficult time, because for a lot of these students, it's their first time leaving home. And a lot of attention I could see is paid to create a very welcoming, very upbeat, very positive, and overall a an experience that the students will not soon forget. And it's very similar to how we used to build our communities in video games, where we spend a lot of time making sure that they feel welcomed in the community, making sure that they when they spend time with us, they definitely have fun, and sometimes they make friends, and so on and so forth. So that, I think that part was really surprising to me, is how much emphasis and how important it was to really nurture a community feel. Because when I go to, say, luxury condos, and Vancouver has no lack of those. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia, and Vancouver has no lack of those. They are of a different feel. It's a lot more luxury, amenities and so on, not so much community. So that was a very pleasant surprise, actually. It's very familiar to me, and it's something that I understand, and I'm glad to be able to be in an industry that also takes communities very seriously. I enjoyed doing that when I was in video games.
Cool answer. Very cool answer. So, this is usually the time I ask the question of, what would you suggest to the audience, operators, developers that are also listening to this, when it comes to choosing someone in your industry.
Right.
I'm going to ask that a little bit different, because I've already gone through that experience with you. I've worked with other companies that, are in the VR space, and, I know the difference between what I paid that person for versus what I'm now paying or part of our group that's paying you for the project that we're working on now.
Right.
And the one thing that I know what sets you apart from them, from some of those other companies, but I really want to hear from you. What is it that you would say, look, if you're going to do VR, understand, here are the things that you need to be looking for, because it's not just how great it looks.
Right.
So if you want to dive into that, I think that would be great.
Sure. And you're right, Wes, that it's not just how great it looks. VR is a brand new medium, right? And a lot of people have heard about what we call simulation sickness. So where it kind of feels similar to motion sickness, basically what you get when you get on a boat, or when you are in a car. But it's worse in that you could take off the headset and you would still feel the sickness for hours afterward. So not all VR software is created equal. So be very cautious about that. If all the VR software, if it's well done, if it's well written, it should not make you sick. Of course, it's the first couple times, it's a little bit disorienting, in that this is brand new. I don't know what I'm looking at. But when you turn your head, it shouldn't make you dizzy. It should not make you sick. So that's one thing. And that is all invisible to the eye, actually, is that because a lot of the work to make sure that sickness doesn't happen is behind the scenes. That's where my software engineers come into play. They make sure that the software is written so that it is perfectly performant, it is optimized, and the sickness doesn't occur for our viewers. And then beyond that, sorry, go ahead.
A quick question about that. Does that matter if it's something where you've come in? I mean, because you can even do this, yourself if you know what you're doing as a property manager, or as a developer. You could come in and scan that model with a 3D scanner, essentially.
Yes. And
do that tour. Is what you're talking about with that motion sickness and being able to fix that. Is the same thing true for, I want to call it scanned images, but a scan tour versus a rendering tour? Absolutely.
In fact, scanning could be even more difficult to make sure that you don't get sick, because if it's all virtual, right, like the renderings that we do, what we could do is we could do things behind the scenes to the 3D model so that they play well, for the lack of a better word. They play well with the software itself. But when it comes to scanning, that means it's a physical space, right? So the result of these physical spaces mean that they may not automatically play well with the software itself. So what that means is you actually need to spend potentially, of course it depends on the space, potentially more time and therefore more money to get these spaces to work well in VR. So it's a very, very intricate process. It's kind of like because what we're used to with computers right now and with our mobile phones is it's all 2D, it's on one screen. But all of a sudden with VR, it's all of a sudden 3-dimensional. So you can think of it as there's one more layer of data for the computer to process. Therefore, either the computer needs to be much more powerful or the data itself needs to be optimized in such a way that the computer could process it. So there's a lot of these intricacies that needs to be considered when a client comes to us with a VR request. So I would say that if you're looking at a VR solution, right, you should ask these questions to your VR vendor, right? What kind of hardware do you use, and what can I expect when it comes to the software? Can I try a sample of your work to make sure that I don't get sick from it? It's very different than buying an app on your iPhone, because you pretty much know what you can expect when you buy an app on your iPhone. But that is still not quite true when it comes to VR. There's still a lot of moving pieces that you need to get right in virtual reality.
Right. So, one other thing, and I didn't hear you mention it in that, but I was looking forward to you talking about it. So I'll just ask you on it, because one of the things that I haven't seen with other providers of VR services for the real estate industry is being able to provide analytics on specifically what's happening on the website and people that are viewing that on the website.
Yes.
But tell us go over that a little bit for us on what you guys recently started marketing and telling people about in regards to the analytics dashboard.
Yeah. So what as you said, the analytics dashboard, what we've recently launched, about a few months now, is a website where our clients could log into and see how many times their virtual tours have been viewed. So we know, for example, just by looking at our clients' data in aggregate, of course, that amenities are very, very important, but the floor plans, or I should say the virtual tours of the floor plans, definitely still get at least 10 times, if not more, views within the same property. So we thought we would provide this information to our clients because we think of, we take a lot of artistic pride in our work, in our renderings, in our virtual tours. But at the end of the day, they're part of a package for our clients to use to lease their properties. And just like any other assets that you use in marketing or sales or operations, they can be tweaked. So when we look at these data, we can see, say, for example, one floor plan is a little bit more popular than others. Then we can ask our customer, well, why do you think that is? Are you just pushing this particular floor plan more? Is there a promotion going on? Which tends to be the case, actually, when we see usage or viewership of one floor plan spike. Or is there something else is there something different about these two virtual tours that maybe we can improve for next time? So these virtual tours, these renderings are just like any other assets that you could understand, that you could document, get data on, and understand and continue to tweak. So we're pretty excited about our customers using it, and one of the things that we are hoping to do is to see if we could notify our customers automatically at the end of the month or on a weekly basis, depending on what their preference is, to check their metrics, because we think that it is one other parameter that will help them understand how well their leasing initiatives are performing.
That part's amazing, and I think because it's great to see when folks are coming to your website, right? But then also being able to see, because you can render a 4-bedroom and a 2-bedroom and a 1-bedroom and have all of those available, and then be able to see where are people spending the most time at,
Mm-hmm.
2-bedroom. Is it granular enough that you can actually see where maybe there's something that, and I'm thinking, and I'm taking it out of the I'm taking out what I learned leasing apartments in reality, and thinking of, how about if I was, because I would go in with with a prospect, and I could see what their eyes were going to be, what they were focusing on, and if it
Right.
was based on their facial expression, if it was something that they disliked or something that they really enjoyed. And I could begin kind of digging into that, and finding out, what is it that they liked? Did they like the having a balcony? Did they like the granite countertops? And are those some things that stood out to them? But in a virtual reality standpoint, where you've got, where that's happening either in a leasing center or a leasing trailer with goggles on, or with someone in the comfort of their own home in front of their own computer looking at this, or maybe even using goggles on their own computer, or looking at it with with a mobile device. Are you able to kind of capture things that they seem to be looking at more than other parts? Like if it is the granite countertops, or if it's the black appliances, or are you able to dig that granular into it, or is that something that you guys are
I
looking at?
Oh, I love to do that when my engineering team could be freed up more. Basically, what we are discussing is a heat map. So it's basically normally it's represented as a flattened version of the space. So like a flattened version of the 3D model. And a heat map would basically tell you what people have been, where people have been going to, where they have been navigating, or what they are seeing, what they're spending the most time seeing. So I love to do that, because that's something that I want to provide with to our customers, in that it actually turns out, for example, that when they are in the unit, they're really spending a lot of time looking at the kitchen cabinets, for example, right? Or they're spending a lot of time looking at the bedroom way more than the kitchen. Most people just breeze past the living room, that kind of thing. I love to do that. That's definitely something that's on my mind after after I'm able to free up some of my software engineers, because they're also looking at one of the challenges. We talked a little bit about fly-throughs earlier. Fly-throughs tend to be very, very time consuming and very expensive to do. So one of the things that the team is looking at is reducing that cost, so that we can create better fly-throughs at possibly a lower cost. So they're busy doing that right now. So I'm hoping that at some point in the near future, we can beef up, if you will, our metrics a little bit more.
Very cool. And the other thing that I'm looking forward to, the first time I met David a couple of years ago at a trade show, and he was talking about, actually for Halloween, you could decorate your model for Halloween or for Christmas or some other holiday, and that would be really, really cool. And then
I know.
we kind of geeked out on being able to do gamifying it, and
Yes.
hiding some things within the tour, and we could encourage people to come take a tour, and if you find Waldo or whatever it is,
so many things I want to do. Yeah, that would be awesome.
That we could do that. So I'm looking forward to those things. Hey, a couple of questions for David, as David's really the one kind of tasked with customer success and all those things. Not everybody that's listening to this is a developer with something new coming out in the next couple of years, and they're saying, oh, VR is the perfect thing for being able to illustrate this project to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
because the other part of the audience are folks that have properties that maybe, just delivered but didn't have doesn't have a VR experience on their website, or maybe it's a much older property, and you guys have got solutions for them as well. So if you kind of walk through that, and then also really kind of want to come back to what's the timeline, with those different services that you guys offer. So I'll hand that over to you.
Right. So for obviously pre-build project, we'll render it and we'll stage it. We'll work with your marketing team, make sure all the stagings are suitable for the demographics, and make sure it's all relatable to your targeted audiences. Now, with the older properties or existing property, we can first bring a scanner to your site and scan your demo units, your floor plans, put it on your website. And as Dora referred to previously, we actually do our own in-house proprietary work to make sure the production that we do would fit very well into our virtual reality apps. Mm-hmm. So we actually not only scan it, we'll also do a secondary capture to make sure the data that we have is clean, it's comfortable at the end, the resulting tour is comfortable in the goggle as well as on the website, right? Obviously, another kind of in-between option is we're seeing more and more our clients purchasing older properties and rebranding them, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have these kind of renovation coming up, we can actually work with your design team to make sure that we can give you a rendered tour based on your renovation plan, right? These rendering projects are typically smaller because we're only usually talking about the amenity space, right? And we can limit the scope to the area that you are rebranding or renovating with. We had a really good success last year in Statesboro with Campus Apartment. And any industry insider will tell you Statesboro is not an easy market for the past year.
No, it's not.
For various reasons. And this property that was previously not doing so well, that's why they're renovating. With our rendered renovating tour as well as the perspective, they were able to outperform not only historically, but also on the market average for that year. All the while construction is ongoing. They have no amenity space to show physically to the leasing students, right? So that was really encouraging, and we had a very exciting chat with Campus Apartment about the results. So this is one thing that we're like to see if more and more our client who are going through renovation will consider as well, right? You don't have to worry about this whole your entire clubhouse is wrapped up, right? We can have it all rendered out, and you can blast this whole rendered upcoming new clubhouse where the tarp would be, and then you can point to that. So look, this is what's coming up, and you can see in all its high definition glories, right? It actually worked. I'm really excited to see that. I can not only tell you it looks really good because Dora makes sure everything comes out photorealistic and awesome. But also now we have data to show that this works, right? And the budget is actually very friendly as well. So because I understand renovation has usually a smaller budget than a new build, right? So these are almost the three type of things that we can do, right? A full-on new build with completely rendered tour and perspectives, scan one with your existing properties, and a smaller scale rendered project for your renovation project. So.
Well, and let's talk about timelines for just a second, because the one thing I love about you guys coming from the gaming industry, you guys have an annual cycle as well. Instead of move-in day, you guys were dealing with, shipping before Black Friday, right?
Yep.
So I completely appreciate the sensitivity that you guys have for that. And, if today at the time of this recording, we're at June 6th, 7th, something like that. And, move in is a couple months away. And now I'm already starting to think about next leasing season. What type of time frame? Let's first just start talking about because I know it's a much quicker time frame. Let's talk about something that's being scanned. What type of time frame? When do those need to be scheduled in order for that to have an impact? Say I want to have it by December on my website. When would be the right time to be contacting you guys and getting something set up?
While scanning projects usually a lot faster, the actual production only takes 45 minutes to an hour for the demo units. For your amenity space, probably a couple of hours, right, depending on how large it is. Mm-hmm. What really we have seen that delay the timeline is really whether or not a local management team can work with us to make sure all of the space that the headquarter wants to produce are clean, at least, and then hopefully staged at best, right? And please make sure they're maintained at the quality of all of those hard work until our production team gets on site, right? We had a story that it was clean and staged, and overnight something happened, and our production team flew in, and we were dealing with a lot of debris and stuff. So I think it takes some discipline and collaborations from our project management team as well as the local management team to make sure it's clean, it's hopefully staged, and it's all maintained well before we get there, right? I would usually build at least a month leadway to arrange all of that, right? So the local team can get on board, hire the cleaning team, maybe run to Bed Bath & Beyond and grab something that, within the budget, obviously, to stage it at minimal, right? And then we'll schedule with our traveling production team to come on site at the predetermined time, right? So I think a month is usually what required to do this right. Just build in some cushioning, obviously. Yeah.
Gotcha. And from a new development or even something that's being renovated, where you guys are relying on the architectural drawings in order to deliver something, what's the time range on that? Again, if that's something that you're typically wanting that live by July, August, maybe even a little earlier, so that you're teasing the market before spring semester's over with. But how long is that timeline once you guys get a contract in place?
Right. I think there's twofold to it. First of all is when you and your marketing team wants the assets, right? Marketing collaterals, basically. And what type of them that you want for the project that you're about to promote. From our side, we do perspectives. Those are the traditional kind of stills images, right? You like a picture, basically, rendered. You put it on website, and usually is great for social media. And then there's the 360 virtual tours that you can put it on your website as well as in goggles. And then at the end, there's the fly-through sizzle reels.
Yeah.
We usually deliver with that sequence, right? Perspective, tours, and videos. So depends on when your website needs to be ready. Our perspective usually should time to be delivered for that, right? So at least you have something to show, right? Tour usually comes the second, and then the fly-through comes last. I would say for renovating project, we'll need 2 months at least, at minimal, just to allow us to gather all of the files from your interior designers. Sometimes your architects needs to be involved because if structure needs to be changed, right? For pre-build, at minimal 4 months. And the reason being that pre-build has a lot more modeling involved. We're actually rendering out the entire building instead of a space that you're renovating, right? So those are the differences. I would say 4 months at minimal.
Gotcha.
Now, the trend I have seen from our clients' requests is everybody wants these things earlier and earlier. I think 5 years ago when we started, everybody's okay to have it ready at the beginning of January of the same year to be delivered. And now we're up to almost, I think, April of the previous year. So I think market is being competitive and everybody just want to be the first to the market, right? Yeah. Having that in mind, please reach out as early as you can, and so that we have enough cushion to deliver those collaterals when you need them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when I said that, the caveat is sometimes you want it at a certain time, but if your architect or your interior designers are not ready with their design decisions, then we can't obviously give you the tour and the videos and the perspective you want because the design is not done yet, right? So I think all the stakeholder needs to be on board and on the same page. We have recently got into a project, the developer is ready to go, but the designer hasn't got the order to finish the interior plan yet. So it was a bit of a surprise for them. So yeah.
Well, and you know, and just to kind of give my own kind of piece of advice on, you know, on this, obviously having you guys, you know, keyed in as early as possible is key. And when you're talking with other people on the timelines, I mean, it's that same triangle of time, quality, and price, right? And you know, you guys kind of have that perfect triangle, and I would say probably even overextends on the quality angle, because you guys are the best quality that I've seen. You know, that doesn't mean you're the most expensive, but it certainly doesn't mean that you're the cheapest either. But and so, you know, because of that, I think it takes time. I can say from personal experience, you guys are very efficient in pushing that timeline along, which is awesome. Yeah. The other thing, just to the developers out there, you'll probably have your architect, you know, say, hey, we can do this in-house and may try to upsell you a little bit on it. Listen, I could tell you, I know how their architects are doing that, and it is nowhere near the same as to what you guys are delivering, or even any of the other VR companies that are out there. It just doesn't even come close. So, just my piece of advice: if your architect tries to sell you on that, you know, I'm sure it's probably a software company that has trick them into thinking that, you know, they can do VR renderings and charge a premium on it, but it is nowhere near the same. But anyway,
thanks to touch on that. I mean, it's very interesting. I just had a meeting with Harry Morton from Campus Suites, a very well-known developer, used to based in Florida, and he is revolutionizing the student housing industry in Canada. Yeah. So I think he's spearheading the institutionalizations of the student housing industry in Canada. He's building some of the best of a kind projects in Toronto, and then there's one coming up in Winnipeg, one coming up in Calgary, right? You don't see those kind of scale. It's pretty typical nowadays in the States, but it's rare in Canada to see those large scale, properly done project. And early this year, we had the same discussion about qualities, right? And he said one thing that I literally said, okay, Henry, slow down. Let me take notes, right? He's like, a lot of people ask him what made him so successful in student housing. He said at the end, was all about building a community. And then that's probably what Dora was saying that before.
Yes.
And right, I mean, once you have community, you have renewal, you have rent, justifiable rent increase year after year, and all of that. Just the success comes based on that, right? And he said the reason I pick you guys because you're the best, and for what I do, I need quality.
Yeah.
And he said quality begets care, care begets community, and community is everything that will lead to success in student housing. And I think it's probably true in most of the industry nowadays.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Very, very, very wise words from a student housing legend.
Exactly.
Well, great. Well, hey, as you mentioned, you guys are also based in Canada. Dora, you're on the West Coast in Vancouver, which,
Yep.
that lends a lot to, the background story of coming out of the gaming industry, as a lot
Yep.
of that is based there. And,
Huge industry.
Yeah. And then, David, you're also on the kind of the East Coast in Ontario,
Yep.
in Waterloo,
In Toronto.
yeah, and
in Waterloo.
and so but I will tell everybody, don't don't let that concern you as far as working with these guys, because I think David, you've probably spent more time in the States this past 2 years than you have in Canada.
Yeah, I think last year 80% of our business from States, and it's just the sheer volume of activity is pale in comparison as the Canadian activities, right?
And haven't had any issues of you guys billing in Canadian dollars and.
No.
So, like I said, anyone that is not used to, dealing with a Canadian company during the construction process, there's absolutely nothing to worry about from that.
We actually file provisionally to our IRS under treaties. So we use W8 instead of W9. That's the only differences when it comes to billing. So
yeah, and if there's any of the developers here in the U.S. who are looking to compete against the likes of Henry Morton, David knows the student housing market in Canada very well. So reach out to him, and he can give you a real good knockdown of who the players are and where a lot of the opportunities are at.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. David, if someone's listening and they want to get in touch with you, just give us a list really quick on website and email and how they can get a hold of you.
Right. You can reach us at uForis.com, and our email is sales@uForis.com or david@uForis.com. Both works. And our Twitter, Instagram, and all of the accounts are linked to our overall HubSpot. So reach out however you want, wherever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is uForis, UFORS. Well, let's try that again. It's UFORIS. And again, thanks for being a part of everything that we're doing with Student Housing Insight. I'm hoping at the rest of the summits, because I don't think you showed up in Florida with a pair of goggles, but I'm hoping at the rest of the summits this year you'll be able to show everybody the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm waiting for Reno's experience to be available.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
Right. It'll be more relatable, I guess.
Well, great, guys. I appreciate it so much. And sorry we had to do this twice, but, I want to make sure that everybody can actually hear what's being said. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to Dora and to David talk about their journey with creating uForis and serving the student housing industry. Of course, all their information is going to be linked to the notes in the podcast. So if you want to get a hold of them, certainly check there to get a hold of them and visit their website. Well, guys, I appreciate it. We've got a lot of things that are going to be coming to you over the next couple of weeks. We're just now at the end of turn and have kind of going on a little bit of a hiatus, but we've got a lot of content that is coming your way. And we look forward to hearing your comments on this podcast as well as the others that are coming back. Make sure that if you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do that. And would love for you guys to rate this podcast on Apple iTunes or in Spotify. Those certainly help us get the word out to everybody else that is looking for student housing resources. And we know that this podcast is certainly a resource that will help them out. So please go rate us. Thanks, guys.